Aloha, Cupcakes. I've had a thing with urethane for a little bit, so I thought, with the recipes that I've invented, we're going to try this, and I'm going to see if I can get the smell out of this. Also, this is Custom Shop's urethane. These are true U stuff. This one's a little bit older, but I'm going to give it a shot because I haven't reviewed this paint just yet, mostly because I haven't found a comfortable way to work with it. So let's see if I can make that happen. All right, so let's start with the fact that this is a metallic urethane that I'm working with. It's already going to be a little bit more dense than just, say, a solid color would be, and I anticipate having to paint some thicker lines because of that. Because, I mean, you can kind of see that it's a little sparkly while it's in the cup. It's going to be thicker. So first thing first, I'm going to add some reducer to it. I'm not adding a lot. I'm adding drops. Like, that might be 6. It might be a 7 as well. I have an eyedropper for this, and I have no idea where it is because I don't know. Just stuff happens. Now, the one thing that I do with this, the part of what I'm doing, is I'm mixing the hardener, the catalyst, whatever terminology you feel the need to use, and then I'm going to add a few drops of the flow enhancer, which is also known as a retarder. I get away with using that word. Yeah, I know. But what I do is I let them sit in the cup for a few seconds until it starts to get a little wavy. When you do it, you'll actually see it. And then I just dump it in, and then we start mixing it up. Now, right away, as I start mixing this, I start smelling it less and less. It's almost like it's diffusing the amount of plasticky smell. So I'm going to add just a little bit more of that mixture in there. And you don't want to just dump everything in. Whatever batch of hardener to flow enhancer I mix up, I add about half of whatever I made to it first, just to make sure that I don't make it too liquidy. I mean, eventually it'll dissipate the same as reducer will, but I always have a feeling that I'm going to put too much. And I've yet to do it. I've been pretty good about not doing it, but for the most part, I always have that concern that I'm going to do it. Now, paleting this out, it's very smooth. It's definitely got the right feel to it right off the bat. I don't need to add too much more reducer. I think I dipped it maybe once while I was doing this. And I'm already getting some fairly sharp lines. I do have to work on them a little bit. So I'm going to have to palette this just a little bit more. But notice that there's no bubbles. So I'm a pretty big fan of that. So far, so good. This little experiment seems to be working very well for me. So let's get our panel and let's get this thing going. I'm going to start off with just a single center line following a piece of tape because I've given up on guidelines since I don't follow them in the first place. You'll notice right here my ring finger has a little bit of a twitch to it. So I'm going to switch things up and put this... I have a glove that I use that's actually for drawing on tablets, but it just covers my pinky and my ring finger, and it puts a little bit of pressure on the top of my wrist. And it's just enough that that twitchiness of my ring finger doesn't really interfere with what I'm doing. And no, I don't have to do this every day. It's not something I have to do every time I pull stripes. It's a weightlifter problem. So if you're not deadlifting 400 pounds, you're probably not really going to be required to use one of these things. Or you can, I don't know. If it helps you, use it. If it doesn't help you, then don't use it. But yeah, I'm definitely applying a much cleaner line once I started doing that. So that's a huge help for me, at least. Now, one thing that I'm trying to do with this one, because I am using the Da Vinci, this is the 00, and this is the synthetic brush. This one is not the long liner, apparently. So it's a little bit shorter than the 2 long liners that I have. But it gives me a little more leeway for turning. So I just thought I would use this one because it's the brush I grabbed. The other thing with this one is I can lay the belly of the brush down a little bit and pull a thicker line if I have to. And then I can stay right on the tip when I've got good flow going. Honestly, I didn't think I was going to be pulling lines this sharp with this paint, so I'm a little surprised with that as well. Typically, when I've worked with this stuff in the past, it's been some pretty thick lines. So maybe I'm going to pull fine lines, and I realize that it's a little bit thinner, but it's also not as reduced because of what I've added to it. And it's definitely helped with the consistency, and it allows me for a little bit more comfortability in terms of how I'm pulling the sharper lines. Now, side note for you guys, if you've been watching any of my other videos, typically there's a little bit of a time lapse where I speed them up or any of that stuff. This video I'm leaving in real time. Not for a really intelligent reason. It's just, if I would leave an example for why I speed them up. Because I feel, just from my perspective of watching the playback while I'm recording these things, that I move super slow. And I know when I'm pinstriping, when I'm actively working, it doesn't seem slow. It's when I'm watching the playback of the video. Now, I thought I'd use a little editing trick to see if this was cool or not. I promise I won't do too many of these. Now, some of these sharper lines, like that one, where I start from a heavier line and move it out to a thinner line, I thought it'd be fun to try that in reverse. That's what's happening here. It's kind of worked a little bit. I'm probably going to have to retouch that line later, but for the most part, it worked. Now, I got a few questions about what it is that I'm doing when I'm holding the handle of the brush upright like this. This is just, I've adapted painting backwards a long time ago. And part of it is because it helps with the cameras, because it gives me a little bit more, it gets me out of the way of the camera so that there's more of it that you can see what I'm doing. And then part of it is just because I've gotten comfortable doing it in a weird and awkward angle. And sometimes I'm even symmetrical while I do it. But normally, this is the kind of thing that when I do this, if a paint's not going to hold up the way I need it to, these are the lines where I'm going to see the brush flare out, or you're going to see like glops in the paint. And no, it held up. We maintained consistency. The lines are coming out cleanish until I realized that I just dragged my finger in the wet paint. So I kind of messed that up right there. Don't drag your fingers in the wet paint. Let's see if I can do that right this time. And not so much. I'm actually resting my right hand on top of my left hand so I could pull that one without making contact with anything, because I dragged my fingers in the paint for the one right before it. And I dragged my finger in the paint just now. My middle finger just dropped into that wet line that I just painted. Good job, me, right? All right, let's be smart this time. All right, so this paint so far, it's been pretty, I don't know what the word for it is. It's consistent, but it also kind of leaves me with just enough of a leeway where I can kind of mess up a little bit and it still looks pretty clean from my perspective. So it seems to be working out okay. And I am going to do this with a couple of the other colors just because I do have the green and I have the metallic gold. But not going to do that today. Because I think the longer I'm working on this, the more I'm realizing that there's a bit more soreness than just my wrist going on here. And it's starting to make it so that I quiver while I'm painting. So, food for thought. Maybe an hour after you've been to the gym is not the appropriate time for you to be trying to test out paint and pinstripe stuff. But I had this idea, and I thought that if I mixed up the chemicals right, I would be able to get it to both gloss up, to not smell, and I just thought it would be a fun idea to try. So I fired up the cameras, and I'm doing it. Okay, and then I messed up right there. Did you see it? It was pretty cool. The whole panel jumped because I was putting my elbow on it so that I didn't have to put my hand down. Didn't mess the line up, though. Just want to call it out. Now, right about here, I'm starting to see that the paint is starting to get a little bit thicker on the brush. Now, understand that I am just going until the brush starts to malfunction, or to where I start getting goofy looking lines. I have not added any reducer. I'm just taking the paint out of the cup and I'm going for it. That's part of why I left this as real time. Because I've got a feeling that with the hardener and with everything that I'm working with, I may have about 13 to 14 minutes of working time before I start getting to a point where I need to start reducing the paint and considering remixing it. Which is pretty good, actually. At least when it comes to urethanes. When it comes to enamels, it's closer to like 23 minutes that I have. And understand that when it comes to enamels, that is going to change depending on your humidity and your air pressure. With urethane, though, so far I have not seen any variance based on that. It seems like urethane is just how quickly it dissipates. So temperature affects it, but your humidity and your weather don't really seem to impact it at all. Same thing with the dry time. So the more humid it is, the more enamel doesn't want to dry. But if it's dry, the enamel dries quicker. But when I'm working with this stuff, I basically, by the time I've finished 2 or 3 lines, the first lines where I started are dry. And you can see it not so much in the images that you're looking here, but when you were working with this stuff, what you'll see is that it kind of gets a little hazy while you're working. That's the paint drying. At least with this one. With Ronins, it doesn't do that so much because it maintains its gloss. Which also, this is not maintaining its gloss. So I guarantee you, I'm going to have to clear coat this stuff. But getting it to where I can work with it and to where I can stand to work for a period of time with it is a little bit more important than whether or not I need to clear coat it. So I'm going to read up on some of their sheets. I want to see if there is actually a way that you can do it without having to clear coat it. But I got a feeling that even with... Well, I don't think they have a way of doing it with theirs. That's just not something they have formulated, I think. But that's fine. If I have to clear urethane, I'm used to that. That's been pretty normal with every urethane until the ones that I got last year. So I'm not upset about that. I do like that these guys have their entire color scheme available in both the metallics and then they have the pearl colors, which... maybe when I'm done working with these ones, I'll consider ordering them. Because I think right now, when I looked them up, it's about $30 for a 4-ounce bottle of each. And I think that was consistent regardless of what color it was. So I may do it, I may not. I don't. We'll see how this one goes. Well, we'll see how the other 2 colors go, I should say. But so far, I'm pretty pleased with this. Because up until now, the times that I've had to work with this stuff, it almost needs to be outdoors because of the smell. But a little bit of flow enhancer, a little bit of hardener, and then just reduce it as necessary. And it seems that the smell is, at the very least, tolerable. I can still smell it. It definitely has a strong smell to it. So it's like you still have to have the doors and windows open. But it's not to the point where I feel nauseous or I'm getting a headache or I need to wear a mask or anything like that. I can just work. And so long as I've got a decent airflow in here, it's not going to choke me out. So... big fan of that. So I think in the comments or the description of this video, I will leave a couple of links. I will actually go find this correct purple so that way I know that I've linked this color purple. And I'll see if I can figure out what the... well, I'll put the links in there for where you can get the supplies for what I used for this, okay? Those will be in the comments. But here, check this out. I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. That's all. I like it. This has been fun. So true to form, all I had to do was put a little bit of flow enhancer, a little bit of hardener, and let the 2 sit together for a few seconds just before I mix them into the paint. And while this one's still pretty stinky, I was able to get it to flow. I was able to get it thin enough to be able to pull some decent lines with it. And I was able to make it work. Because ultimately, that's all that matters, is so long as we can get this stuff to work, right? So till next time, stay moist, my friends.